Welcome to the #1 spot health and wellness practitioners go to double their current income and turn their 10-hour work day into a 10-hour work week. Join us as we dive into the tips, tools, and tech you need to create a life and practice on your own terms. More freedom, flexibility, fulfillment, and of course, funds. It's time to build your online practice. And I'm your host, Michelle Rogers, also known as the Wealthy Woman. Be sure to subscribe for your weekly dose of education, inspiration, and action. Let's get started. Excited to introduce you to everybody that is in this room, in this container, and people who are going to be watching the replay as well. So just so you guys, I keep giving like a little bit of a background. Like I've been working with the DNA company now for I think like 3 or 4 years. And they've been really awesome and pivotal in my own private practice, just really helping with customized lifestyle, nutrition recommendations, and really optimizing the functional genomics piece and, really tapping into bioindividuality and epigenetics. And it's just been really, really amazing. And I've learned so much just from the company and just from the results and just how we can really impact so many lives. So thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, amazing. So today's session is called Genomic Mastery, how to use precision genomics and behavioral change to achieve true longevity. So Kashif here is Chief Executive Officer and founder of the DNA company, where personalized medicine is being pioneered through unique insights into the human genome. Growing up in Vancouver, Canada, in an immigrant household, Kashif developed an industrious entrepreneurial spirit from a young age. Prior to his tenure at the DNA company, Kashif advised a number of high-growth startups in a variety of industries. And as Kashif dove into the field of functional genomics as the CEO of the DNA company, it was revealed that his neural wiring was actually genetically designed to be entrepreneurial. However, his genes also revealed a particular sensitivity to pollutants. Now, seeing his health from a new lens, Kashif dove further and started to see the genetic pathways that led to his own family's challenges and the opportunities to reverse chronic disease. His measure of success is not in dollars earned, but in improved lives. I love that you use the word opportunities there, because that's what it is. This information gives us opportunities to improve and really gives us the guidance on where to make those improvements.
For sure. That's it was my personal experience when I had this, why is this all happening, right? Why do I have eczema, migraines? Why do I have psoriasis and all? Let's treat it, but I don't know why any of it's going on. And that's really, if in a nutshell, like you said, what we can drive from our genome is the why, the root cause, you put it beautifully.
I've been doing this for a while. I don't know about you. Just kidding. I'm curious, Kashif, do you work from home or do you go into the office at the DNA company?
So depends how we feel in the morning when we wake up. So
choice equals freedom.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
I mean, our work for the most part is research, it's advocacy, it's building better products. So we're able to work remotely. We also do some clinical work like supporting people, which can also be remote. But I go to the office when there's need for quiet time. Right now there's 2 kids that any minute now could walk in here and slap me in the face.
So I guess that brings me into my question, which is what would be one struggle that you have working from home?
Yeah, that's literally it. And one of we have another Kashif in our company named Kashif Siddiqui, who's our chief digital officer, who has trained my kid that when I'm on a call to hit me on the head with a stick.
What?
He literally taught him this. So anyways, that's one of the challenges.
We'll see. We're going to get it on video if it happens.
Yeah.
And then what would you say would be a perk or something really awesome about working from home?
Well, I guess it's I find I can pack in so much more, right? I literally crawl out of bed, put on a shirt, doesn't matter what I'm wearing below the shirt.
Exactly. We won't talk about that.
and I can just go back to back to back because I'm here, right? I'm not distracted. There's nobody else pulling on me. And if we're in the office, that stuff happens. What about this? What about this?
Mm.
If we're not together,
Mm.
all of a sudden everyone figures everything out, right? So yeah, it's a different, very different dynamic of just like grind and get it done, which it's awesome, you know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Amazing.
Oh, sorry, I lost you for a second.
You ready to dive into questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, all right. So tell us, how was the DNA company formed?
So my actual personal health journey, I would say, drove it. So all the stuff I was talking about, I ran a completely different business, and my business partner used to have to drive me home because I had crazy debilitating migraines to the point where I would like either vomit or fall asleep, one of the two. Otherwise, I couldn't function. Eczema, where my left eye, literally couldn't open it. It was like sealed shut. Psoriasis on my knuckles, gut issues, mood issues, depression, didn't want to go to work some days. All of a sudden, all at the same time. And obviously, there's a different doctor for each thing I'm describing and a different pill or a different scan. And none of it, and this is the first, by the way, foray that I had with health problems. I had been healthy up until that time. Didn't make
Mm.
sense, couldn't understand why. And my concern, because I wasn't used to going to the doctor, was why aren't they telling me why any of this stuff is happening? That really frustrated me. Like I would say, okay, but what should I do? What should I change? Just intuitively knew that those were the questions to ask. They're like, what are you talking about? Take this pill, right? So there's nothing to change. You have eczema. You have to take this pill. So, anyways, that's what led me to functional medicine, which is what drives so many people to functional medicine. And I started to dive into this theory of, well, if it all happened at the same time, maybe there's something genetic going on, right? Because they're not separate, they're all the same. There's a central hub from which all these spokes are coming out. So I dove into my genome and it sucked. What I found was that genetic testing didn't really do much. It was like, you got 80% chance of Alzheimer's, your hair is brown, which I kind of already knew. And what does that 80% chance of Alzheimer's give you other than anxiety for the next 30 years waiting to see if it's happening or not, right?
Which probably ends up contributing to you getting
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So then I started to dive deeper into the genome and see what's going on there. And I found some scientists that were doing amazing work in terms of functional interpretation. What does that mean? Well, it's the same thing as medicine versus functional medicine. It's not the what, it's the why. It's not you have a genetic condition. Why do you have it? And the conditions that we're most likely dealing with aren't genetic conditions. They're diabetes, cholesterol, cancers, Lyme disease, mold intolerance. None of these are things you're born with. These are all things that happen to you later in life because it takes that many years of exposure, misaligned to your genomics, to cause that level of inflammatory insult where you get sick, right? That's why these are chronic diseases because they take a long time to develop and then they stick with you. That's when I truly understood the root cause. And for me, there's two things. So most of it was one bucket, and then one thing was another bucket. And I'll tell you those two things, and then I'll shut up. So most of it was the fact that in my genome, I was literally missing. Forget about what SNP or what version. I was missing in my human instruction manual, which is what your genome is. There was pages torn out. The glutathione pathway, which is what determines how well you detoxify chemicals and even when you drink alcohol, your liver helps you get rid of it. I didn't even have the key genes. Forget about what version. Gone. Didn't have them. Mom and dad both didn't give it to me because ancestrally didn't need it. Right? Downstairs in our office, there was a manufacturing company that was putting this toxic stuff into the air, which I was sitting there breathing in. So over some time, I started to develop eczema, migraines, psoriasis, gut issues, because I wasn't clearing these toxins. So they were just free flowing in my blood, wreaking havoc. My business partner who used to drive me home didn't have any problems because he had an extra copy of this gene. Not only did he have it, but he literally had a duplicate copy. So he was like a superhuman detoxer. He could drink a gallon of paint and just walk home, no problem. Right? I would sit there like, so a completely different outcome. And that's when I truly understood that our genome determines what we're capable of and what our exposure should be. Then the other one, the depression, was not tied to this stuff, although it exaggerated it. The inflammation, even neurologically, exaggerates what you feel. So the dopamine pathway is what allows you to feel pleasure and reward. I ate something tasty or I did something good at work, right? There's a gene called DRD2 that determines to what degree do you experience that because how dense are your receptors. I have the least density of receptors. There's a gene called MAO which comes along and breaks up the dopamine to bring you back to normal because you have to eventually get to back to normal. Then there's a gene called COMT which clears that metabolite out, the broom that sweeps it up. Mm-hmm. So I have the lowest DRD2 and the fastest MAO and the fastest COMT. But why did I get depressed then and not the rest of my life? Well, when I was younger, I was constantly striving towards, we were very poor, right? So I was constantly trying to make things happen. So I was striving towards reward. Mm. So I never experienced a depression because I had something to occupy my dopamine pathway. Then my father passed away. I became responsible for the family. So I started working, building businesses and trying to find ways to make money. And I was even deeper down the reward path. So I became highly entrepreneurial. Then I felt like I'm doing okay. I can kind of take a break. I can pay the bills. Everything's okay. When I took that sort of step away, the context changed and I became depressed, right? Because I wasn't getting that dopamine hit, which for me, I need a lot more than a normal person because I don't experience pleasure from the normal everyday stuff. So I have three outcomes: depression, addiction, or achievement. That's what I'm wired for. Depends now what context I wrap myself around. So I've learned all this. I haven't been sick in years. I don't have any of those list of problems anymore because I now know how to manage the root cause or system failure as opposed to masking the symptom.
That is so powerful. And I think it goes back to, we were talking with Dr. Dick and Weatherby earlier. It's just like this information is so incredibly empowering because it really helps us, like you were saying, get to the roots, right? Yeah. Instead of guessing and being like, oh, you're depressed, like, let's just give you some pills or whatever. It's like, no, actually, I just needed to change like my behavior, like, or my environment or like my daily habits and routines. And it's like, man, like if more people had this information at their fingertips, it would be completely revolutionary.
Yeah, that's the challenge is that, well, there's a couple layers of that. One layer is that genetic testing in general is pretty prolific now. Like it's out there. Mm-hmm. How many people have done an ancestry test? I think like 80 million people now have done one, right? But what did they get other than your 5% Italian?
Right? Yeah.
So what really happened is a data collection company sold you something that's entertainment to get your data.
Yeah, right? We'll talk about that in just a minute.
Yeah,
because I bet that's a question a lot of people have. It's like,
it for sure is.
What's happening?
Yeah. So so really, the DNA sort of world needed to interpret better. That's what was missing. Right?
Yeah.
So, and so the access was available. The access to what I'm talking about wasn't available. And that's what we're hoping to change.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, what's the difference between, say, functional genomics versus like SNP testing? Because I think a lot of practitioners are really familiar with SNP testing, or even just like, they've tested one SNP here and there, like you were saying, the ancestry testing or things like that. But what's the difference between that and actual functional genomics?
So genetic testing will tell you what each gene means, what version of what gene you have, and some science blurb about what that gene means, right? That is not yet interpreted. That's just data. Mm-hmm. Data is, here's your list of genes, and here's what the scientific literature says this gene does. But just like I said, the same gene pathway for me in three different contexts has three different outcomes. So it's not the depression gene, it's not the achievement gene, it's not the addiction gene. It is the dopamine binding gene. You then need to interpret, what does that mean? You can't interpret until you understand context, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, all those things that compound the effect of something. So genetics is exactly that. This gene means this gene means this gene means this gene means this, based on a bunch of SNPs. The human body doesn't work that way. There's 22,000 genes in your body. So you don't have 22,000 independent separate processes going on. You have a hormone system, you have a cardiovascular system, you have neural pathways in your brain. You have a detox system. We already know how those systems work, right? The challenge has been that biochemistry and or I should say biology and genetics didn't meet, right? Everything is a biochemical thing, not biophysical. How do I pinpoint a gene to make a drug?
Hmm.
Right? How do
It's
I
super
figure out?
reductionistic. It's just like
Yeah,
A
yeah,
plus B equals C. And it's like, but you're missing like the holistic
yep.
pattern. Yeah.
And that's why in genetic tests, you only get certainty when it's a genetic condition. This switch is turned on, you have a problem,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
When it comes to chronic conditions, you only ever get propensity. You have a 60% risk of cardiovascular disease. You got an 80% chance of risk of Alzheimer's because your genetic profile points to people getting that. But you still don't know why or what to do about it. And I'm also being told when you have an 80% chance of Alzheimer's that I have a 20% chance of not getting Alzheimer's, right? But nobody is asking the question, how did those people avoid it? That's functional genomics. So when I
Hmm.
give you a genetic profile, here's how you're wired. What are the environment, nutrition, and lifestyle choices to keep me where I'm at? The health that I have today, I should be able to hold on to that until the day I die,
Hmm.
right? That's functional genomics. What are the
Or
environment,
optimize it.
or get even better? Exactly.
Yeah.
Have more
Yeah.
energy, more resilience, slow your aging down.
Hmm.
So genetics is here's your gene list of genes. Functional genomics is here's the right environment, nutrition, and lifestyle choices based on the cards you've been dealt.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I think it also the big thing that I remember learning from the DNA company early on is like the insertions and the deletions. Like that was like mind
Yeah.
blowing to me.
So
It's just like, oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Like
uh,
let's talk about that.
on the technical side, in order to do what we do, we have to test for more. So a list of SNPs is okay, but in certain genes, it's not enough. So
Mhm.
what is a SNP? A gene is thousands of letters long, that code that makes up the gene. There may be a letter that's a T instead of a C. There's an error in the code. Now all of a sudden that gene doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So if it's like a fat metabolizing gene, you don't metabolize fat that well,
Mhm.
right? Insertion or deletion, there's a whole paragraph missing. So imagine you're reading a book
Mhm.
and you're reading the book and it's like Their or There. They both say there. The snip is that spelling mistake. You kind of get what the thing is saying, but you notice the mistake, right?
Mhm.
The word is trying to say something else now. What if there was a whole paragraph missing? You really, you might still be able to get it, but there's something missing that you needed to know,
Mhm.
right? And now the instruction is completely broken. What if there's a whole page torn out or two or three pages torn out? That's called a copy number variation, which most companies don't test for because they don't need it to sell data, right? That's when you don't even have the gene, which is what I had in the detox system, right?
Mhm.
Or you have an extra copy of the gene. Same thing with the insertion or deletion. You could have an extra copy of the paragraph. So now the instruction is doing that thing twice.
Mhm.
So if a SNP is so impactful, imagine how impactful it is if you don't even have the gene.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
do the thing, whatever it's supposed to do, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So important. And it's like the reason why I love functional genomics is like what you were kind of alluding to earlier is like the body systems and like being able to see these things in patterns and like how these genes are actually interacting together and like creating a story as
Right.
opposed to like what you're saying. I think there's so many practitioners out there who are like, take MTHFR, for example, right? It's like, oh, I have the MTHFR SNP, so I need to provide activated B12 or folic
Yeah.
acid or whatever. And it's like, it's a little
Yeah.
bit more complicated than that.
That's a perfect example of genetics. Genetics is what is this? Let's try and find the methylation gene. Let's try and find the brain gene. Let's try and find the heart gene because that's what is medicine. It's average based. It's one size fits all. You
Mhm.
can't make drugs if 10 different people need 10 different drugs,
Mhm.
right? That's personalized medicine, which is not
Yeah.
what pharma is trying to do. So MTHFR gets pulled out as the superhero. Here's the methylation gene. If we can deal with that, we can answer people's questions, right?
Yes.
In reality, methylation is a system. It's a cascade. And you've taken the starring role of MTHFR, the main sort of gene, but there's upstream and downstream. You can have the best MTHFR and your
Hmm.
methylation still sucks. And your doctor will
Hmm.
tell you you're wrong. Because there's 3, 4 genes this way and 3, 4 genes this way. What if they all suck?
Totally.
Right? Or you could have the worst MTHFR and everything else is great. So if
Hmm.
you don't understand the whole system and cascade, you can't be certain, you can't be actionable, and you can't say,
Hmm.
do I need a B12? Do I need a B9? Do I need a adenosine or a methylcobalamin? Do I need a sublingual under
Right.
my tongue? There's so many nuances other than take some folate, or do I need folinic acid? Like, you know,
Totally.
Yeah, you can get a lot more precise and certain.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's been a total game changer, taken away a lot of guesswork. Another one that was really pivotal for me was the vitamin D ones, like
Yeah,
the dose versus like the transport. And I was just like, like
yeah,
what? Do you
yeah.
want to explain a little bit about that?
This is one of the areas where people have a lot of impact. So of the 22,000 genes in your body, 2,000 require vitamin D to function. So 10% of your human biochemistry is dependent on this one micronutrient, which, it actually acts as a hormone, not, it does many different functions. It's not truly a vitamin. I believe that it's been rebranded a vitamin because if people knew what it was, then nobody would be sick, right? So, so you have this vitamin on the shelf that's considered like your cold and flu booster, but it does so much more. Um, so now the process, because it's one of the few micronutrients, because it's a hormone, that if you have too much is actually toxic, right?
Mhm.
It can hurt you.
Mhm.
The body has learned to mitigate it. So unlike vitamin C, A, zinc, all these other things, where there's one gene that does one thing and just converts it and metabolizes it, when you go to the doctor and you're told, hey, I did a blood test and this is how much vitamin D you have. Here's your number, 60, 70, 80. That's just how much is in your blood. That's gene number one. Get vitamin D from the sun, get it from food, and put it in the blood. Depending on where your ancestors live, you might do that well or not so well, depending how much sun they got. Then you need to transport it to the cell where it's actually used. That's another gene and another process, and nobody measures that. So you could
Mhm.
have plenty in the blood, but a worse version of the transport gene, so you're not getting enough to the cell. Then you need to bind it. That's a third gene in a separate process. If you have a bad version of the binding gene, the little that you transported also didn't bind, and then all of a sudden you didn't have enough vitamin D. So the person that's taking their 4,000 IU might only be getting 500,
Mhm.
right? So the solution is twofold. You have to increase the dose, first of all, and you have to split the dose.
Mhm.
Because if you can't transport it fast enough, well, whatever you took now, you already know you're not going to use all of it. So you need to split to get to the level you wanted. And you need to increase to get the total end game from the actual amount you took,
Mhm.
right? All of a sudden, brain fog is gone, these weird joint pains, winter blues are gone, menstrual cycle gets better. Everything just sort of gets repaired because you have this key hormone supporting everything.
That you're actually dosing correctly. Like
Yeah.
I was one of those like that needed divided doses, like
Yep.
because my transport sucked. But anyway, so let's you've been kind of like alluding to it, so let's dive into it. A lot of people are worried about data and privacy.
Yeah.
They know or they've heard that data is being sold. So what do they need to look out for?
So, I think you just assume that your data is being sold because that is the genetic industry. And why is it that way? Because the genetic business isn't a great business because your DNA doesn't change. So once I test your DNA, we're done. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Right? So the investors started to saying to all the testing companies, well, how do we make money? So the money was, well, I have very valuable information about this person that maybe design drugs or design protocols or governments may want. So they all became data selling companies.
Mhm.
So we said that actually became our opportunity because
Mhm.
if they're creating a test where the front end consumer is paying $300, $400, but the back end data buyer is paying $5,000, well, then they're not designing it for you. They're designing it for what data needs to be collected. There's a nice marketing message wrapped around it, so it feels like, all nice and fluffy and everything. But really, the product is designed for what data needs to be collected because they're paying 15-fold what you're paying. So what we said is there's a huge opportunity here to do what people intended, which is take my DNA and tell me everything, mine my data and tell me what I need to know. So we started doing that, and we started building algorithms and reports that speak to anxiety and depression and addiction and menopause and keto diet, vegan diet, the things that people actually need to know. Now that we do that, we have a relationship with our client that is not buy a test and we're done, but now we work on coaching, now we work on supplementation, now we work on building the programs, now we work on clinical consults. So we believe that if you deliver the right value, people are so wowed and impacted that they stick with you,
Mhm.
right? And so we took a different route. So we don't do that. It's right in our contract. Data is anonymized and aggregated, but I would, to answer the question, if you buy a DNA test, assume your data is being sold or at least mined.
Yeah. 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 Oof. It's a
Yeah.
big one. So how can practitioners provide access to this tool, this awesome report to their clients and patients?
So the way so there's two ways. Just like any other blood work or lab work, you can set up an account. We send you a few kits. You can stock them. If you work virtual, we can drop ship for you to your clients. We can do both, or sorry, one or the other, or a hybrid of both. If you need more kits, we can. It just the five is sort of how you get started. If you need more, we can work that out. Um, there's a retail price and a wholesale price, of course, and in that we did one thing that we thought was really important, which is we understood that what the consumer wants and what the clinician wants are two very different things.
Mm.
And this is another reason why genetic reporting at the clinical level sucks, because reports are either made for one or the other. They're either nice, flashy marketing products that the consumer is very happy with, but they're too big and too cumbersome for a clinician to use because now they got to read 20 pages of stuff to answer a question that it takes you
Or
2 hours.
60.
Yeah. So you're spending like an hour and a half to prepare for a half an hour paid consult and nobody's paying you for that time, right?
Mhm.
On the other end, the clinician is like, tell me, what's the problem and how do I fix it? Right? This is a lab report. You're giving me blood work and make it easy. I shouldn't need training. I shouldn't have to take a course to understand this document. What is it? What are you telling me? Right? So we actually said, let's just make both. So we created a portal that a consumer can dive into and they can look up anxiety, they can look up mood and behavior, they can look up diet nutrition, they can look up sleep. Why can't I sleep at it? They can look up hypertension, diabetes, and understand where they fall, how do they rank, and what to do about it. And they feel wowed by it, right? We also created for the consumer what we call a gene cast. It's a personalized podcast that dives deep into the genes. So whereas the reports dive into the conditions, this dives into the genes. Let's look at the MAO gene. What does it do? And what version do you have? What does that mean for you? So it's almost like a virtual consult they're getting, right, from a PhD. For the clinician, we build a summary. So it's all the same reports that your consumer gets so that when you talk to them, you're referencing the same sort of terminology. Oh, can we look at this section of my sleep report? You can pull that up, but it goes straight to the red flag, tells you clinically this client is prone to ADHD behavior because of ABC gene. Here's the supplement recommendations. Here's the lifestyle recommendations. Here's the environment recommendations. You can walk into a review with zero preparation, sound like a genetic guru, and never have prepared or studied anything. That being said, we have courses, we have training, it's all available.
Yeah.
I'm downplaying stuff that we sell, training to tell you you don't need it. Right?
Yeah. And I would say practitioners are super lucky now too, because like when I started, it was like I was studying all of Mansoor's like audios and
Yeah,
like going through everything and cross-referencing.
yeah.
It was a very different thing. I mean,
That-
I learned so much and all of
you
that,
had to
but
go through 8 hours of audio in order
yeah,
to interpret the reports,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
now the reports, so what we did was we built an artificial intelligence platform that does the interpretation for you.
yeah,
It's not a bunch of data that like, what does this mean? Like, no, mean is anxiety, weight loss, like the things that people have, hair loss, cellulite. This is what people ask about,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Beyond that, one thing I should add is we put in the reports what sort of everybody asks about. That doesn't mean that's a limitation of what we know. So there's certain clinicians, especially I know you're helping people build their practice. So there's a lot of stuff about specializing and having a very focused message, right?
Mhm.
So if you're like, hey, I'm the mold queen, not that you're moldy in nature, but that you help people with their molds, right? Or I'm the breast cancer queen or whatever. So there may not be a specific section in the report that says here's what you do with mold, but we still know. So we can build guides for people. And what do I mean by a guide? It's not a report which takes a whole bunch of engineering and AI to populate, but it's just a 2-page document that tells you how to navigate the report for that purpose.
Mhm.
Now all of a sudden, whatever your specialty is, your clients, whether you give it to them or whether you just have it so your staff knows how to use this document for that purpose. So again, we've done the interpretation for you for that problem.
Super cool. Super cool. And you
Yeah.
guys are ever evolving, which I think is cool too. Admittedly, sometimes frustrating. But it's really cool that you guys are like just like evolving and you do listen. Like I have calls with you guys somewhat regularly, it seems. And it's just like you listen to my needs and what my practitioners are wanting, what my clients are wanting. And I do really, really appreciate that. So thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Um,
And thank you for the feedback because what we built is not based on what we thought we needed to build. It's based on hundreds of doctors telling us how they need it done and why genetics sucks for them.
Yeah. So true. So last question on your website, it talks about Dr. BJ Fogg and Dave Asprey. How were they involved with the DNA company?
Sure. So Dr. Mansour, who you mentioned, led the genomic research. So where do we start in terms of what genes do we understand? What do we think about them? What pathways? How do we build the pathways? So that was that. Then it's like, okay, we kind of know what's wrong. Here's where you're broken, right? Then what do we recommend? That's where we did a lot of work with Dave Asprey. So he's an investor in the company. He's an advisor also. We spent a good year and a half with him mapping out all the various solutions that people need. We're actually going to start curating that stuff, which is really cool because the clinicians who work with us will be able to offer those things and earn a margin. And the journey doesn't end at the test, right? If we're very uniquely saying, here's how we look at the problem, which is not the way any doctor will tell you we look at the problem, we also have to provide a unique solution, right? It's not the same solution for that problem. So we're curating all that stuff with Dave. Then we said, okay, we got the problem figured out, we got the solution figured out. How do you actually get people to do it? Because even though I tell you, turn your laptop off 2 hours before bedtime, we know you're not going to do it, right? TikTok, Instagram, it's too enticing. So we hired Dr. BJ Fogg and we said, how do we actually get people? And by the way, for those of you that don't know him, he runs the Stanford University Behavioral Change Lab and he wrote the book Tiny Habits, which is all about how you get to change your behaviors, right? So he implanted that behavioral change science right into our reports. So when you read them, the final section is here's the habits you need to change. Here's what you need to adopt. Here's what you need to drop. Here's the easiest way to do it. You know, when it comes to a habit, how do you actually scale that habit? Meaning, I've figured out how to do this at home, but when I go to work, it doesn't work for me, right?
Yeah.
When I have a Christmas party, all of a sudden I can't eat the way I want to eat. So those things that you would never think are part of your therapeutic journey are, and that's almost the most important part because people don't comply. They don't follow through. They say they did it, but they didn't really do it, right? So we teach people how to do things.
Yeah, yeah, that is super, super, super cool. And like as a practitioner, it's like saving time, saving energy. It's just like it's awesome and it's so helpful. And I think there's a lot of learning opportunity for practitioners too, just through the DNA company. You guys just offer so much information, which is amazing. Amazing. Anything I didn't ask you that you want to share that you feel like maybe there's a gap or something before we dive into Q&A?
Somebody's asking, oh, sorry. Yeah, I jumped into the Q&A. Sorry.
We'll dive into Q&A, I promise.
Yeah. I would say that, I would say the key here is, and this is from my own experience, is when you try and use genetic tools, right? They're difficult. That's the challenge. It's hard to do them without training. And so we try to make it easy to use. That's the key. We've also said that beyond genetics, we understand your business because we've talked to so many doctors. So the product should be designed as something that you can keep going back to and creating more revenue from. And so this is why we purposely divided it into these sections. Patient, let's do a sleep program. Patient, let's do a hormone program. Because they're coming to you for something, but the genes are saying many other things that they didn't even know they need to work on, right? So we've also understood the need for how do I create more revenue or how do I hire more staff? Because now all of a sudden you can have a genetic coach that does stuff because you have enough content that drives so much impactful stuff for you that the patient didn't even know they needed, but they will be thankful for that they went through it, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that's another big one in terms of design. I always think about product improving. Like you said, we're constantly making it better and better and better. We're never going to stop doing that. In fact, the next iteration we're already building right now, which is that we're going to add ranges, meaning that if I tell you that you're prone to anxiety, well, based on your existing environment, nutrition, lifestyle habits, you may not feel it because you're already doing everything right. Right?
Yep.
So we need to first ask you what you're doing and then tell you you have a 90% chance or a 5% chance because of these habits. right?
Mm.
So tying the epigenetics into the genetics, and we're never going to stop making it better. And there's other ideas we have, which I could go on for the next hour just about the ideas. But
Yeah. But I
no,
mean, even what you just said is like that also is just going to help with client compliance or patient
yeah,
follow through or whatever, because they're going to actually see. It's like they can see why they're making these habits. And
yeah,
that's what I always go back to with functional labs. It's like they can see how their symptoms actually are reflected in like their genes or their labs or whatever. And it really incentivizes them to make those changes. And when you
yeah.
have those lifestyle nutrition, targeted nutrient therapy modifications available, it's like there's just so much more incentive for them to actually follow through with that. So, yeah, I love it. It's good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Of course. All right. Just a reminder, everybody, to pop your questions in the Q&A section, please, just so we can keep everything organized here. And Kara's going to pop in a link for Kashif's gift, which is $100 off a DNA 360 report, which is super cool. I highly recommend, I always recommend people run labs on themselves before they recommend them to their clients and patients, just because it's like, it's super important, one, to like actually go through the process, the collection, just that whole experience I think you should have before recommending it to anybody else. And then also just going through the report yourselves and really starting to get familiar with the reports and with the results, because I think that's how you can really start to embody that knowledge and share it in a way that feels really empowering to your clients. Like one of the things I remember from getting my report done was like I found out I had, I think, like 6 genes associated with obesity. And it
Right.
was just like, and like I share that with my clients sometimes because they'll get sometimes, right, they'll get discouraged, right? They'll be like, oh, I've got this gene, and it's like it's like a downer, and it's like, no, this is like empowering information, right? If I have 6 genes associated with obesity and I'm clearly like I'm not obese, right? It's because of how I manage my environment, how I manage the inputs and all of that stuff. And it's like that's the power of epigenetics and this genetic information that we get to have. So
Exactly.
yeah, perfect. All right, so let's dive into Q&A. Bum, 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 bum. So here we go. All right. So Mackenzie says, so there are a few different companies that are along the same lines. I'm trying to figure out what testing to bring onto my practice. I was looking into 3x4 and self decode. So what sets you guys apart from those companies?
So self decode, we're a friend of ours. They do great work. Again, that's genetics, right? It's not functional genomics. So what does this gene mean, right? Which is good for genetic conditions. It's good for some level of guidance. It's not functional medicine. It is genetics. So their job, what their business is about, empowering third parties like healthcare companies with genetic insights. So like hospital systems, they also obviously do what they do. You can upload your 23andMe results and get more information, but that tells you how deep the dive is. Because if you can use 23andMe results to get the report, then they're only looking at SNPs,
Mhm.
right? They're not, and there's also no pathway interpretation. So there's a time and place for that, which is like, if you want something that's more sort of recreation, the good thing that they do is there's many reports. So if you want recreational level but high volume, if that's the type of client you have, that's the right place to be. If you want a focus, like here's the stuff that actually that matters, right? And it's much deeper dive. That's what we do.
Mhm.
Both are correct in different sense. That's why we're both in business because both needs exist, right? Three
Mhm.
by four, I would say, is the closest to what we do. They're moving towards this functional interpretation, but again, the reports are not designed intuitively the way we design them. They're designed clinically where you need to interpret them and take training and learn, and and they don't speak to the conditions and they don't provide recommendations. So that's the difference. We're call it soup to nuts, A to Z, the full genomic solution when it comes to chronic disease and aging, not genetic conditions,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and I I also want to bring up, we didn't really dive into it, Kashif. I don't know if you want to, but the supplement piece too, and the
Yeah.
customized supplementation, that's really cool because I'm always a fan of decreasing the amount of capsules or pills or whatever that I'm recommending to my clients. And I think it's really cool and really convenient to have these blends that the DNA company is kind of put together and created, because I think there's like, is it 12 or 14 different, after running like however many labs you guys ran, you came down to like 12 or 14 different sort of compounds or like compounded
Yes.
formulas. Yeah, I'll let
We
you kind of take over.
Yeah, we actually built a compounding pharmacy in the middle of our office, and we built thousands of custom formulas for people in order to learn how to make formulas for each problem. Things
Mhm.
like estrogen dominance, inability to sleep, methylation problems, right? Trying to deal with genetic expression management versus masking the symptom. So we did that for some time, and then we we learned that here's these 14 formulas that when we looked at the thousands of people, these formulas cover everybody. Because we didn't know, for example, when our first research was on female hormone conditions, mostly around breast cancer, we thought it was an infinite number of profiles. After going through about 400 women, we learned that they always fit into one of six buckets. We didn't know we were going to find that.
Mhm.
So hormonally, the cascade, you have one of six profiles. The middle two don't need anything. They're optimal. The outside two need something. And they just need a lower or higher dose of the same thing, right?
Mhm.
So we went from custom compounding 400 different women's formulas to like, oh, we actually only need two products and just a different dose for different women. But it took us time to get there, right? So
Mhm.
now we have them. We actually, so they're sold under our brand on our website, and obviously there's a margin for clinicians, but we also white label for clinicians if it's a subscription. So if your client is going to go through this genomic review and they start to see things from a very different perspective, it's like, oh, I need to deal with my innate root cause system failures, then they're going to require from you, can you provide me those solutions? So we already have them, and we also believe that the work that you do to develop and own and have a relationship with that client, the stickiness of uh, keep buying the supplements from me because I did the work to teach you what to buy doesn't exist because it's about once they leave the office, it's Amazon, whatever's convenient at the time they run out, and
Mhm.
wherever it's the cheapest. This way, we solved a bunch of problems. We're giving them what they actually need: root cause, genetic expression management, not symptom masking. It's white labeled under your name, so there's a deep connection with you, and they can only get it from you. They can't get it anywhere else, and it's best in class. It's not just what everybody else does. So you also appear to be ahead in terms of product curation and research. You're dealing with genetic expression, not masking symptoms. So again, after talking to many, many doctors, we realize this is the best way to do it. So if it's a subscription, we can white label. If it's bottle by bottle, it's not possible to white label, so we can pull them off the website, but that's what we
Mhm.
built.
Yeah, yeah, super, super convenient. And I took one of your customized formulas, I think, for like 3 years.
Oh,
Like, and it's like literally like it was like a customized formula. So
yeah.
there was like a lot going into that. So it's cool that you guys have come down to like just the basics, and then you can kind of, as a clinician or practitioner, you can add in like any of the missing nutrients
Yeah.
that they need kind of acutely. But these compounds or these complexes, I don't know what you prefer to call them, but they can be kind of used long term, right? Because they're supporting genetics, and it's
Yes.
just like it's awesome. So thanks for all of that. Next question from Laura: how do we get a practitioner account with the DNA company?
I just put the registration link in the chat. Sorry.
Perfection.
And it
Yep,
was
I see it in there.
yeah, so you just click there, you sign up. I think it takes like 24 hours for someone to review it and approve it. Um, and you can get set up. If anyone listening is not a licensed practitioner, but still wants an account, we have the ability for you to open an affiliate account. Uh,
Mhm.
there's two key differences. One is you're not ordering tests or stocking tests. You're only sending people to the affiliate link, which is we'll actually give you a page where you can send people to. Certain areas, like for example, naturopaths in Canada are not allowed to order genetic testing, so we give them an affiliate page. It's instead of $100 margin, it becomes a $90 margin because we're paying for that software, right? That's really the only difference. Um, I'll put that link in here also.
Yeah,
Uh,
perfect.
but this is if you're not a licensed practitioner or have some kind of number um, to open an account, then you can just open an affiliate account, which still allows your clients to order. Will actually build you a landing page so your clients go there, order, and it's accredited and attributed to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Easy peasy. All right.
Yeah.
Susan says, if you're lacking the gene to detox effectively, how do you improve and protect your health?
Oh yeah, that's the best question you could have asked. So that's
You're very
exactly,
familiar with that.
yeah. That's what coming down to genetic expression, that's what we're talking about is you don't do this function, right? You need to now go deal with the world. How do you do that? Well, there's two things you have to do, and you have to fight both fronts. One is reducing the load. So whatever the thing is you don't do that you don't fight, you got to stop doing that stuff. So if you don't deal with toxins and heavy metals, and well, then you can't eat like this, you can't expose yourself like this, and you can't golf for 5 hours and breathe in toxic pesticides every single day. Things that you have to start thinking in a different way. What does your mattress look like? Is it made out of memory foam, which is full of toxic chemical bubbles that burst, or is it a nice organic cotton? You have to think about everything in your home, chemical sprays, etc. Right? The second thing is turning up the dial on capacity, which means supplementing the right way or eating the right way. So one is removing the load of the thing that you can't cope with, and it's different depending on where your genetic holes and gaps are, and then increasing capacity. So finding out what pushes genetic expression up, and it's usually supplements, it's usually food at a therapeutic level. So those are the two things you do, and that's exactly what we put in the reports, right? You don't do this thing well, so we recommend you stop doing this, you start doing this, and you take the supplement.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool too because you guys get really specific because it's not just like some people think like, oh, it's just liver, it's just glutathione, but like it's also the lungs, right? It's also like the
Yep.
GI. Like there's other things to consider there when it comes to detox and just supporting those detox pathways in the best way, right?
That's a perfect example because the gut instinct is, oh, my glutathione pathways suck. I don't detox. I'm going to go take some glutathione. Well, if
Hmm.
you don't have the genetic instruction telling glutathione what to do, it's also going to bind onto minerals and nutrients, and you're going to feel like crap. You're going to end up in bed, right?
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many naturopaths we've had to teach that glutathione IV is the thing that's actually killing that person.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive because you would think, oh, they don't deal with glutathione, I'll give them the glutathione. Yeah, but it requires instruction. So
Yeah.
that person needs precursors. They need
Yeah.
NAC, selenium, alpha lipoic acid, milk thistle, the things that go to work without instruction,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So that one nuance can completely change your practice from people
Hmm.
being completely disappointed and like, she can't help me or he can't help me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, this is amazing,
Yeah.
right?
Totally. Totally. Yep. 100%. Good stuff. Um, Line or Lene says some people are anxious their data will be available for their insurance company.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant by that's usually the case.
Mm.
Anyone that's a buyer, it'll be sold. But to speak to me, or I should say our company particularly, it's in our contract. We don't do that. We
Mhm.
don't sell data. We don't mine data. In fact, the way our database is structured, it's all aggregated and anonymized. We can't even find the data if we were to look for it. Right? It's not here's this person's genome, here's all this stuff. It's all anonymized. So, and we purposefully we partnered with the Canadian government, Genome Quebec, so that even our staff isn't processing the data, right? So we partner with probably the most secure lab in Canada, Genome Quebec, which is ISO registered. It's run out of McGill University to make sure that our team doesn't touch the data. It's they don't touch it because it's not their client. We just get a bunch of raw Excel files. Our algorithm populates your reports. There's nobody in between handling it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Awesome.
Sorry, somebody just said over here on the other thing that we didn't provide the non-licensed link. It's that DNA.clinic. It's just a couple messages up. So DNA.clinic is the non-licensed link.
Yeah, you could probably copy and paste that into your web browser
Yeah,
because it didn't hyperlink. So yeah, cool. Michael says, what cost and how do we get your test kit?
sure. So for today, for yourself, so the retail is 400, wholesale is 300. We did that link that you see there today, the Kashif gift, is allowing you to buy it today at 300 without opening an account or any minimum order or whatever. You don't have to stock the 5 kits. You can just go buy your kit or as many as you want at that price. So that's the test margin. The subscription margin, the retail is $200 a month, which is what the consumer is paying, and there's a 30% margin reoccurring. So you get 100 people, it's that reoccurring ongoing margin for you. Um, then The other supplements that are standalone, the margin is higher. I think it's 40 or 45%, because we're not doing the work of the white labeling and all that stuff that it takes to get it custom for you. So it's a slightly higher margin. We also do some coaching where we understand there's certain clinicians. So some clinicians say, I want this product so I can build coaching programs. Great. There's some clinicians that say that I'm really busy. I want more revenue, but I don't have time to do more work or see patients. So we will actually do the coaching and become an extension of the practice and white label to you, meaning that all of a sudden you have a genetic management team. That's the experience your client gets, but you don't have to hire anyone, train anyone, do it. We'll do all the work. And we've been doing this manually for a handful of clients that are very close to us, where they send us people, we answer the phone as them, we email them as them. The entire experience is an extension of the practice. We've now built a platform for that so we can scale it out to more people, and that's launching this month.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. Good stuff. Perfect. Next question. As a health coach with an affiliate account, would I have access to the clinical report?
Yes. Yeah. So anyone that is who has, call it, clients, has access to the report. We're not talking about anything diagnostic, so we don't have to ask, who you are to provide you the report. We just want to make sure that there's somebody in between, because some things are, there has to be somebody helping the client. For example, when it comes to the supplement recommendations, we provide a lot more to the clinician than we do to the client. So there should be someone in between, like looking at that stuff. Otherwise, they might just go take everything, and they end up just having yellow pee. So very expensive yellow pee, I should say.
And stressed out kidneys.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, perfect. And then last question. Again, if you guys have questions, pop them in the Q&A right now. Last question is, Laura, do we get access to the training if we only have an affiliate account?
Yeah, so there's two levels of training. We offer free training to anybody, even if you don't want to work with us. We just want you to learn and think like us and learn that there's a way to think about the genome that's better than genetics, right? So if you go to, I'll add another link here. One sec. So the free training is really centered around our reports. It kind of helps you navigate the reports. If you go to the Academy page, which is going to be added right now, you can do free training. There's also paid training where you can buy our courses, of which there's two. One is more the functional genomics, which is how we think, and then one is genetics, which is the science, the 101, if you really want to geek out, right? And I know that, Michelle, we had said that anyone that comes through you will offer them some special pricing and all that. So just contact us about that. Don't buy the course from the website, because you'll pay full retail. We'll work that out for you. We had promised, obviously, your organization that we would do that, so we will. So that's what it is. So if you go to that link, there's a free course. It's several hours. It's essentially us walking through our reports to help somebody navigate them, but you'll learn a lot through that. And then there's the paid, which goes a little deeper.
Awesome. Perfect. And then Dominique says, what is the cost of you doing the coaching?
So there's 3 tiers of coaching. 2 exist today. 1 is coming. The one that's coming is the easiest, which we built it in reverse. We built the most complex first. So the first thing we actually built is a $5,000 program, which, funny enough, is the thing that people demand the most. Because when it comes to genetics, people think a little differently because it's unknown to them. There's no particular problem. It's not like I get migraines, I want to pay a doctor a few $100s for a couple visits and figure it out. Your genome, people understand, and like all the answers are in there, right? Everything about me. I want to know everything. And so people are willing to spend a lot more money, and they actually want to dive deeper. So our $5,000 genomic mastery product, as we call it, is a 14-week deep dive. It's clinician led, and then health coach implemented. There's a lot of auditing work that gets done from a genomic perspective. And I believe there's a $1,000 or $1,500 margin on that for the clinic partner. And again, we do it as if it's your patient. We do it for you. Then there's an $800 coaching program for which I think there's a $200 or $250 margin, where again, we do all the work. All you're doing is referring the patient into the program. And that's more like micro, where we're focusing on a problem. Like, I need to lose 10 pounds. Mom had breast cancer. I'm trying to avoid it. My hair is falling out. I don't know what's going on. So it's kind of like, let's dig into one thing and solve it for you. just like why they came to you, right? So what we haven't built yet, which is launching soon, is like a single consult, meaning I want to do a call with somebody to figure out something out. I don't need a
Mhm.
program. I don't need coaching. I just want to talk to someone about my migraines. Right. So that's probably going to be like a $200 or $300 thing, of which there'll be 50 to $100, probably closer to $100 margin for the clinic partner. Right. That we currently at that price have what we call a digital coaching program, but we decided to give that for free. So we used to sell it. And what is it? Remember I talked about the Genecast, the audio files?
Mhm.
We realized that it's so important that we just want to give it to everybody. So we canceled that program. People were buying it, but we just took it and now we've included it in the portal.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. So many resources. I mean, that's what the big takeaway is like so many
yeah.
resources in so many different capacities and like different ways, like depending on how you're running your practice, which is super cool. We do have another question from Michael. What will the average cost per patient per month be?
So the subscription price for the supplements is fixed. That's why we do a subscription. And we arbitrage it, like some cost more, some cost less. We just want to make it easy to have one price. And plus, there's labor. It's not just the supplements, it's white labeling, printing your labels, putting your logo on stuff. So there's a labor component to the custom. So it's a fixed $200 a month, 199 to be exact. And there's a fixed 30% margin for the partner, even if they need every single supplement and we're losing money on it, or even if they're taking a little bit less, right? So we kind of average things out. Um, I hope that was the question because we didn't say if it was specifically about
Think
supplements.
so. I think so.
Yeah.
Michael, let us know if that wasn't answering your question. But we have about 4 more minutes. If there are any other questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box or the Q&A option. Is there anything else that's come up for you, Kashif? Like anything that you want to share or feel inspired to say or anything like that?
Well, first of all, I think that everybody's here and present because the fact that you're even doing this, there's some 400,000 something doctors in the US, and most of them aren't thinking this way, right? They're just going to keep
Mm-mm.
doing what they're doing until they themselves need a doctor, which is
Yeah.
funny enough the case. Most cardiologists need a cardiologist to keep them healthy because they just don't take care of themselves. And, so you're going to do with your business what you want to do with your body, which is why you guys are here, which is awesome. All of what you've heard, try and implement as much as you can. Understand it's much easier to grow revenues and build than you think if you start bringing in the right tools, which Michelle has sort of curated here for you.
Yeah.
But in terms of what we're doing, yeah, I would say that key thing is we try to make it easy. So don't the common fears of I don't want to know, or this sounds complicated, or I don't know anything about genetics. You don't need to know. Trust me. With what you know about health, the first report on the first day with zero previous training, you will walk in and sound like a superstar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way we
Good
would
stuff.
plan it.
A couple more question popped in. Priscilla asks, can you talk about the free clinic video we can watch? I can't find it.
So if you go to the academy, let me just go myself and scroll down to the three modules, which are the products for sale. On the left, it says Functional Genomics 360 free. So it says 8 lessons. There's a product called Functional Genomics 360 with 8 lessons. That's the free course.
Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Super great resource. Thank you. And then Michael is clarifying. He said, so if I have a client with migraines and overweight, then their total charge is 200 for product just for them.
Yeah, because keep in mind, when we do a subscription, we're not targeting a condition. We're saying all chronic conditions come from misalignment, your choices versus your genetics. Like me, my hub of detox led to eczema, psoriasis. If I only dealt with the eczema, I would still have psoriasis and migraines, right? So I dealt with the hub, they all went away. So when we create a supplement package on the subscription, we're giving this person everything they need, whether they want it or not, and whether they think they need it or not, right? They may be coming to you for X, but what we're saying is let's plug all your genetic holes and gaps, which will slow your aging down, which will help you prevent diseases that you don't have yet, which will give you more energy, which will give you better, sort of sharp brain activity. So the subscription is we're dealing with every genetic gap we can find, and it will also address the problem you're talking about, right? So we're
Exactly.
not, there's no weight loss program. There's no, we can do that, by the way. We can sell you just a weight loss product or just a migraine product, but on the subscription, the goal is you're talking to the patient who thinks like, no, I want to be the best version of myself. I'm not,
Mhm.
not only want to fix this, but I want to be the best. I want to add 10 years to my life. That's who the subscription is for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's holistic, right? It's like
Yeah.
covering all of the things. Yeah. I love that. Priscilla has one more question. Would you recommend this test for kids as well?
So we have 1 minute and it's going to take me 1 hour to answer that question. So for me, that is my biggest passion is
Mm.
taking all of what we do and reinterpreting for children. All my kids are tested. They get parented differently. We understand how they think, what they need to eat differently. Why is it one kid, wouldn't do his homework? It's not because he had an attitude problem. It's because he was carb crashing after dinner. He has zero insulin response and zero starch metabolization. Why is it one kid leaves his socks everywhere and it is really messy? Because he has extremely high dopamine reception. So he's kind of just happy and satisfied, doesn't really think he needs to do it. So they all need very different parenting. We also can see what's coming in the future in terms of body development. Should they be sprinting? Should they be doing ballet? Should they be,
Mhm.
are they wired to be an accountant or a doctor? Or are they more entrepreneurial? It's all in the DNA. We understand
So
the
good.
neurochemicals of the brain and how you think. So why the trial and error and guesswork? Here's your child's instruction manual. Here's how they're wired. No more, hopefully this works. No, we can tell you on day one what's going to work for everything.
So good. So good. Yeah. Super
Yeah.
helpful. I want to be respectful of your time. There's a couple more questions if like that. Or would you recommend?
Yeah, I can drop my email in here. Sorry, I lost you for a second. So I think you're asking
Oh,
about.
sorry. Yeah. If they have extra questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll drop my email in the chat right now.
Perfect.
So we can
Amazing.
keep the conversation going forever and ever.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much, Kashif. It was awesome to see you, chat with you again. And I'm sure we will chat soon.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See you
Bye.
soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
All right, that's a wrap for today. If you want the exact breakdown of how I help practitioners go from their first 5K to consistent 50K months with just 2 offers, 10 hours per week, and an audience of less than 500 people, be sure to click the link in the podcast description or head to wealthywoman.co/breakdown. To make sure you don't miss an episode, be sure to subscribe. And for daily online practice insights, follow me on Instagram at wealthywoman.co. Let's create your life of wealth, full of abundance, purpose, health, wealth, and joy.